The stars looked different from this part of the galaxy, Lyra thought as she pressed her face against the cold glass of her ship. The vessel shook violently as it entered the atmosphere of the blue planet below. Her small dragon Ember curled tightly. Around her neck, his scales shifting from a calm blue to an anxious red. Lyra was the last of the Sylvan Elves, a race that had lived for thousands of years in the Andromeda galaxy. Now she was alone, except for Ember. Her homeworld was gone, destroyed. In the Great War against the creatures known as Void Reapers, she had been exploring distant stars when the attack happened. By the time she received the distress signal, it was too late. The ship controls flashed with warning lights as they plummeted. Toward the surface, Lyra gripped the navigation panel, her long fingers dancing across the symbols trying to stabilize their descent. "We might survive this landing, Ember," she whispered, her violet eyes narrowing in concentration. "But I doubt the ship." Will the dragon made a soft chirping sound and tightened his grip on her shoulder. His tiny claws dug slightly into her pale skin. The forest below rushed up to meet them. Trees broke apart as the ship crashed through the canopy. The impact threw Lyra forward against the restraints, knocking the breath from her lungs. The ship skidded across the ground, tearing up soil and vegetation before coming to rest in a small clearing. Silence fell, broken only by the occasional spark from damaged systems and the distant songs of unknown creatures. Lyra checked her body for injuries, finding only minor cuts and bruises. Her species healed quickly, a trait that had served them well during the long war. Ember appeared unharmed as well. Though thoroughly shaken, Lyra activated the ship scanner. The atmosphere was breathable, the radiation levels acceptable. The planet was teeming with life, much of it surprisingly compatible with her biology. "This world is inhabited, Ember," she said, examining the data. "The dominant species appears to be in an early technological phase. Their population centers are scattered but numerous." She activated her cloaking technology, feeling the strange tingle as it altered her appearance. The changes were subtle. Her pointed ears rounded her skin tone, adjusted to match the local population. Her height remained the same, tall by human standards, but far shorter than her true sylvan form. Her violet eyes and unusual grace would still mark her as different, but not immediately. Alien night was falling as Lyra emerged from the damaged ship. The air smelled rich with vegetation and earth, so unlike the sterile environment of space. Ember perched on her shoulder, his color now matching the darkening sky, making him nearly invisible. They walked for hours following a faint energy signature that suggested civilization. The forest gradually thinned and Lyra caught sight of lights in the distance, a small settlement nestled in a valley. The scanner called it Pine Creek population. Approximately 3,000. She would need supplies to repair her ship, or at least enough to send a distress signal to any surviving Sylvan ships that might be searching the stars for others of their kind. The thought of her people scattered across distant galaxies filled her with a familiar ache. The settlement was quiet. In the late hour, Lyra kept to the shadows, observing. The dwellings were primitive but showed signs of advancing technology. Electric lights, vehicles, communications devices. Their fashion was simple, functional. The beings themselves looked remarkably similar to her cloaked form, though none had her ethereal quality. Dawn was approaching when Lyra retreated to the forest. She needed to establish a temporary shelter away from curious eyes. She found a small cave half hidden by vegetation and set up the emergency supplies from her ship. For 3 days, she observed the settlement, learning their patterns and language. Her species had a gift for languages, absorbing them quickly. She determined that they called themselves humans and their planet Earth, simple names for beings with such potential. On the 4th day, while gathering edible plants, Lyra heard someone approaching. She signaled to Ember, who quickly hid inside her bag. The human that emerged from the trees was female, carrying equipment in containers. She had hair the color of tree bark and eyes like forest moss. She stopped suddenly when she saw Lyra. "Oh," she said. "I didn't expect anyone else out here." Lyra remembered the greeting custom she had observed. "I was just collecting some plants." The human smiled. "The native species are fascinating. I'm Megan Walsh. I'm studying plant biodiversity in this region." She extended her hand. Lyra remembered this gesture and carefully took the offered hand. It was warm. The contact sent an unexpected tingle up her arm. She was not accustomed to touching other beings. Aside from Ember, I am Lyra, she said, choosing to keep her family name to herself. Are you camping nearby? Megan asked, looking at Lyra's unusual clothing, which she had modified from her flight suit to appear more Earth-like. Something like that, Lyra replied. Her eyes darted to the bag where Ember was becoming restless. A small plume of smoke escaped from the opening. What was that? Megan asked, noticing the wisp. Before Lyra could respond, Ember burst from the bag with a violent sneeze. A small jet of flame shot out, illuminating the forest briefly. The dragon shook his head, looking disoriented and annoyed. Megan gasped. Stepping back, her eyes wide, Lyra prepared to flee. Her hand moved toward the small weapon concealed at her waist, but the human did not scream. Or run, is that she whispered, staring at Ember. A dragon. Lyra hesitated, uncertain how to proceed. This was not the reaction she had expected. He is called Ember, Lyra finally said. The dragon chirped and flew to her shoulder, his scales shifting to a cautious yellow. Megan stepped closer, her expression filled with wonder, not fear. This isn't possible, she said, softly, her scientific mind clearly struggling with what she was seeing. Where are you really from? Lyra made a decision. The truth, or at least part of it, might be necessary. I am not from your world. Instead of disbelief, Lyra saw acceptance in Megan's eyes. I always hoped we weren't alone, she said. The night grew cold around them as they talked. Lyra explained her crash without revealing the war or the threat that might follow her. She needed allies on this strange world, and something about this human felt trustworthy. Your people still believe they are alone in the universe, Lyra observed. Some of us hope otherwise, Megan responded. She hesitated, then added, My cabin is nearby. You look like you could use a warm meal and shelter if you'd like. Ember chirped his approval, his color shifting to a warm orange. Megan's cabin was small but comfortable, nestled in the woods far from the main settlement. Inside were books, specimens, and research equipment. Lyra observed curious devices and images of plants and animals. You live alone here? Lyra asked, accepting a warm drink that Megan called tea. I prefer the quiet, Megan explained. Most humans make me nervous. They don't understand my work or why I choose to live so far from others. They talked late into the night, Megan explaining Earth customs and history, while Lyra shared carefully selected stories of her travels among the stars. She was surprised by how easily conversation flowed between them. Despite their different origins, they shared a curiosity about the natural world. Later, as Megan slept, Lyra stood by the window, gazing at the unfamiliar stars. Ember curled on her shoulder. This world is young, she whispered to him, but there is something special here, something worth protecting. The dragon nuzzled her cheek, his scales glowing softly in the darkness. For the first time since the fall of her world, Lyra felt something like hope. In the morning, Megan offered to help Lyra retrieve supplies from her crashed ship. They hiked through the forest, together, Ember flying ahead, occasionally disappearing among the trees, only to return with some interesting find, a colorful stone or unusual insect. When they reached the clearing, Megan stared at the ship, half buried in earth and vegetation. The metal gleamed strangely in the sunlight, unlike any earth material. It's beautiful, she said, approaching cautiously. Lyra placed her hand on the hull and a section slid open, allowing them entry. Inside, Megan gazed in wonder at the technology beyond her. World's development, the main systems are damaged, Lyra explained, but the communication array might be salvageable. With the right materials, I can help, Megan offered. Perhaps we can adapt some Earth technology. As they gathered what they could salvage, Ember discovered something troubling. A tracking device had activated during the crash. Its signal was weak but present. Lyra examined it, her expression grim. Is something wrong? Megan asked. Lyra considered her next words carefully. If others followed this signal, they might not be friendly. It would put this world at risk. She had not told Megan about the Void Reapers. There was no need to frighten her yet, just a precaution. She said, disabling the device. We should return to your cabin before dark. That night, as they shared another meal, Lyra found herself studying Megan with growing curiosity. The human was intelligent, adaptable, and kind. These were traits her own people valued. Perhaps their species were not so different after all. You said you study plants, Lyra began. What exactly do you hope to discover? Megan smiled, her eyes lighting up with passion. Medicinal properties, mostly, she explained. Many of our modern medicines come from plants. There are likely thousands of undiscovered treatments in these forests. Lyra thought of the advanced medical knowledge of her people. Perhaps there were ways she could help without revealing too much technology. Rest tonight, Lyra said. Tomorrow I will show you some plants you might find interesting. Megan slept. Lyra sat outside beneath the strange stars of this galaxy. Her thoughts turned to her lost world and the survivors who might still exist somewhere in the vast. Days turned into weeks as Lyra settled into life at Megan's cabin. The human world was strange in many ways, but also fascinating. Lyra helped with Megan's research using her knowledge of plants from across the galaxy, while being careful not to reveal too much. Ember had become comfortable in their new temporary home, often sleeping curled up with Megan's small dog Pippa. The two creatures had formed an unexpected friendship. One morning, while organizing research notes, Lyra noticed a calendar on Megan's desk. It had markings on certain dates that repeated in a pattern. She studied it with curiosity. Megan entered carrying 2 mugs of steaming tea. She noticed Lyra's interest in the calendar. Something confusing you? She asked, placing 1 mug near Lyra. These markings, Lyra said, pointing to the red circles that appeared approximately every 28 days. What do they signify? Megan looked slightly embarrassed. Oh, that I track my cycle, Lyra asked, tilting her head. You know, Megan said. My menstrual cycle. Lyra still looked confused. Megan sat down, realizing the alien might not understand human biology. It's a reproductive cycle, she explained. Female humans have a monthly cycle where the body prepares for potential pregnancy. When no pregnancy occurs, the body sheds the uterine lining. You bleed, Lyra asked, her violet eyes widening. And you don't die, Megan laughed. It's normal for us. Not dangerous. Just sometimes uncomfortable. Lyra looked genuinely shocked. You do that regularly? She asked. Every month, yes. Megan confirmed, curious about Lyra's reaction. How does reproduction work for your people? Lyra hesitated before responding. My species reproduces differently. We undergo a transformation once every century when our twin moons align. The process involves absorbing stellar energy. It happens only once in a lifetime. Every month seems very frequent, Lyra added, studying the calendar again. Megan smiled, explaining further. It's not just about reproduction. The cycle affects hormones, emotions sometimes, energy levels. Tracking helps me prepare. And this leads to human pregnancy. Lyra asked, well, that requires other steps. Megan said, her cheeks flushing slightly. Humans reproduce sexually. 2 individuals, male and female. Lyra knew about sexual reproduction from studying other species, but her own kind had evolved beyond such methods long ago. The idea of such frequent reproductive cycles seemed incredibly inefficient, and yet humans had populated their entire planet. Your species' reproductive methods are fascinating, Lyra said. Your bodies constantly prepare for potential offspring even when none are expected. It works for us. Megan shrugged. They spent the rest of the morning discussing human biology. Lyra was particularly interested in the emotional connections that developed between humans, something her own species rarely experienced. Their long lifespans and infrequent reproduction had led to more solitary existences. Later that day, as they walked through the forest collecting samples, Lyra considered how different their species were. Humans lived such short, intense lives. Perhaps that explained their passionate nature, their drive to create and connect. Megan stopped suddenly, dropping to her knees beside a cluster of mushrooms. These are new? She said excitedly. Not documented in this region. Lyra knelt beside her. Their shoulders touched briefly. Lyra felt that strange tingle again. Something about human contact affected her differently than interactions with her own kind. These look similar to a species from my world, Lyra said. They had healing properties, Can you show me how to test them? Megan asked, as they worked together. Lyra found herself enjoying the collaboration. On her world, knowledge was guarded a precious resource, to be shared only with the worthy. But Megan approached learning with such open enthusiasm it was refreshing. That evening they returned to the cabin with samples and notes. Ember and Pippa greeted them excitedly. The small dragon had grown slightly, over the weeks, his diet of earth insects apparently agreeing with him, while preparing their evening meal. Megan winced suddenly, her hand going to her abdomen. Are you injured? Lyra asked, concerned. Just cramps, she replied. It's that time of my cycle. Lyra remembered their earlier conversation. You are bleeding now. Megan nodded, moving more slowly as she continued cooking. On my world, Lyra said we had herbs that eased such discomforts. She hesitated, then added, I could prepare something similar from plants, here if you wish. Megan looked grateful. That would be wonderful. Lyra went to her collection of dried plants, carefully selecting several leaves and roots. She crushed them together, adding hot water. The scent that rose from the mixture was earthy, and, sweet, drink this, Lyra instructed, handing the cup to Megan. It will help with the pain and balance your energy. Megan sipped carefully, her eyebrows raising in surprise. It tastes good and warm, not just temperature but like sunshine. Inside, Lyra smiled. It is working then. Later, as they sat by the fire, Megan looked more comfortable. The herbal remedy had eased her discomfort. She watched as Ember performed small aerial tricks above them, the dragon showing off his growing skills. I still can't believe. His real, Megan said. Her dog Pippa watched the display with curious eyes, occasionally attempting to jump up and join the game. Ember is young for his kind. Lyra explained. Only 50 years. 50. Megan exclaimed. You mean he will grow larger? Much larger, Lyra confirmed, though it may take centuries. Dragons' lifespans far exceed even my people. How long do your people live? Megan asked hesitantly. The oldest of my kind lived nearly 3,000 of your years, Lyra said. But that was rare. Most live to see 1,000. Megan looked stunned. So to you humans must seem like mayflies, Lyra finished. But there is beauty in your brevity. You live with such urgency, such passion. My people often lost that in their long lives, becoming complacent. They sat in silence for a while, each contemplating the other's existence. The next morning, Megan showed Lyra more about human customs. They walked to a small stream where Megan demonstrated fishing. Lyra watched with interest as the human displayed patience and skill. Your methods of gathering food are primitive but effective, Lyra commented. Megan laughed. We have more advanced ways in the cities. This is just something I enjoy. The connection to nature, Lyra understood that the Sylvan elves had advanced beyond needing to hunt or gather, but many still practiced ancient skills as a way to honor their heritage. That afternoon, Megan received a call on her communication device. She called a phone. Her expression grew concerned as she spoke. Is something wrong? Lyra asked when the call ended. My sister Kelly is coming tomorrow. Megan explained. She visits occasionally when she worries I've been alone too long. Lyra understood the implications immediately. I should leave. No, Megan said quickly. Kelly won't stay long, just overnight. We can say you're a research assistant from the university. She won't question it much. Still, Lyra felt uneasy. More humans meant more risk of discovery. Ember would need to remain hidden completely, something the young dragon would find challenging. We will be careful, Lyra promised. The next day, Kelly arrived. Her vehicle raised dust as it approached the cabin. Lyra watched from the window, studying this new human. She resembled Megan somewhat, though her hair was lighter, and she moved with more assertive energy. Ember was safely hidden in Lyra's sleeping area, with strict instructions to remain quiet. Pippa had been strangely protective of the dragon, curling up beside his hiding place, as if standing guard. Kelly embraced her sister warmly, then turned curious eyes to Lyra. Megan made introductions, explaining that Lyra was helping with research. Kelly seemed to accept this, though her gaze lingered on Lyra's unusual eyes. "Nice to meet you," Kelly said. "Where are you from originally?" "Your accent is interesting." Lyra had practiced this response. "Eastern Europe," she said vaguely. "My family moved frequently." The evening progressed with careful conversation. Lyra spoke little, allowing Megan to direct their interactions. The sisters discussed family matters and shared memories. Lyra observed the easy affection between them with interest. Such openness was rare among her kind. After the meal, Kelly produced a bottle of wine. "This will help us relax," she declared, pouring 3 glasses. Lyra hesitated, unsure how human alcohol might affect her physiology. Noting her hesitation, Megan intervened. "Lyra doesn't drink," she said. "It's a cultural thing." Kelly shrugged. "More for us then." As the sisters consumed the wine, their conversation grew more animated. Kelly began asking Megan about her personal life. "So no interesting men out here in the wilderness," she teased. Megan rolled her eyes. "Not everyone needs romantic entanglements to be fulfilled." Kelly turned to Lyra. "What about you? Anyone special waiting for you somewhere?" Lyra thought of her destroyed world, of her scattered people. "My people do not form attachments as humans do," she said, then realized her mistake. Megan quickly interjected. "Lyra's family has arranged marriages." Very traditional. Kelly seemed satisfied with this explanation, though Lyra noticed her giving them both curious glances. Later, as Kelly prepared for sleep in the small guest room, she whispered to Megan, "Your friend is unusual, in a good way." Megan just smiled. "I think so too." That night, Lyra sat awake listening to the sounds of the cabin. The soft breathing of humans in sleep embers, gentle chirps as he dreamed, Pippa's occasional snuffling. The forest outside seemed to embrace this small dwelling, protecting it. She had not expected to find such peace on this alien world. In her long life, Lyra had visited many planets, met many species, but humans were unique. Their bodies constantly ready to create new life, their emotions so near the surface, their connections to each other so vital to their existence it was both their weakness and their strength. The next morning, Lyra helped prepare the morning meal while Megan and Kelly talked on the porch. The sisters. 1 month had passed since Lyra crashed on Earth. She and Megan had fallen into a comfortable routine, working together on research during the day and sharing stories in the evenings. Lyra's ship remained hidden in the forest, partially repaired but still not capable of interstellar travel. The communication array was functional, but Lyra hesitated to activate it, uncertain if any of her people remained to receive the signal. The relationship between the alien and human had deepened beyond mere alliance. Lyra found herself fascinated by Megan's perspective, her quick mind and emotional depth. Megan in turn seemed captivated by Lyra's knowledge and the glimpses of other worlds she shared. Ember had nearly doubled in size, though still small, enough to ride on Lyra's shoulder. His scales now shifted through more complex patterns and his fire breath had grown stronger. Pippa the dog had become his constant companion. The two creatures communicating in ways neither Lyra nor Megan fully understood. Life might have continued in this peaceful pattern, if not for the satellite. It happened on an ordinary morning. Lyra was outside the cabin gathering herbs when she felt a strange vibration in the air. She looked up but saw nothing unusual. Still, her instincts, honed by centuries of survival, warned her something had changed. That evening, she confided in Megan. "Something passed overhead today," she explained, "something that scanned the area." Megan frowned. "A satellite. Maybe the government has thousands. Could one detect my ship?" Lyra asked. Megan considered this. "It depends on what they're looking for. Most are for weather communications, GPS, but some military satellites have more advanced capabilities." Lyra felt uneasy. The ship, though damaged, still contained technology far beyond Earth development. Its energy signature would be distinctive to any sensitive scanning equipment. 2 days later, her concerns proved valid. Megan returned from a supply trip to Pine Creek, her expression troubled. "There's a woman in town," she said as she unpacked groceries, asking questions about unusual sightings in the forest. "What kind of woman?" Lyra asked Ember, perched on her shoulder, his scales shifting to an alert amber government type. Megan said she has identification from a wildlife research agency. But the locals say her questions aren't about wildlife, she's asking about lights. Strange sounds. Lyra and Megan exchanged worried glances. They both knew the implication. The next day they hiked to the crash site. The ship remained undisturbed, but Lyra noticed subtle signs that someone had been nearby. Broken twigs, disturbed soil, nothing a human would notice, but clear to her trained eyes. "We need to move the ship," she said. "It isn't safe here." "But how?" Megan asked. "It's too large, too heavy." Lyra placed her hand on the hull, activating the remaining systems. The ship hummed softly, responding to her touch. "It can still move short distances," she explained. "Enough to relocate deeper into the forest where the terrain is more difficult for humans to access." As they prepared to move the vessel, Ember suddenly became agitated. He flew in tight circles, his scales flashing. "Warning red, someone is coming," Lyra whispered. They retreated into the underbrush just as a figure emerged into the clearing, a woman with short dark hair wearing practical outdoor clothing. She moved with purpose, studying the ground carefully. Occasionally, she consulted a handheld device that emitted soft beeping sounds. Government agent Megan mouthed silently. The woman approached the ship, which Lyra had reactivated its camouflage technology. To human eyes, it would appear as nothing more than an unusual rock formation. Still, the woman's device seemed to detect something anomalous. She circled the disguised vessel. Her expression intense. Lyra felt Ember tense on her shoulder. The dragon was preparing to defend them. She placed a calming hand on his scales, silently commanding him to remain still. A confrontation would only confirm what the agent suspected. After what seemed like hours, the woman finally departed. She took photographs, marked coordinates on her device, and disappeared back into the forest. "We need to move quickly," Lyra said once they were certain the agent was gone that night. Under the cover of darkness, they activated the ship's remaining propulsion system. It rose silently, hovering just above the ground. Lyra guided it through the forest using mental commands, a feature of Sylvan technology. They found a new location, a cave system half hidden by a waterfall. The ship would be better concealed there, protected by both natural features and its own technology. As they returned to the cabin, exhausted from the night's work, Megan asked the question Lyra had been avoiding. "What happens if they find you?" Lyra considered her answer carefully, not wanting to frighten her friend but needing to be honest. "Your government would likely capture me, study me. They would attempt to reverse engineer my technology, and that would be bad." Megan pressed. Lyra nodded. "Your world is not ready for such advancement. It would destabilize your civilization, possibly lead to conflict. My people learned long ago that technological development must be matched with ethical evolution. Otherwise, destruction follows." They reached the cabin as dawn broke across the forest. The light painted the trees gold and amber, creating an illusion of peace that Lyra knew might soon be shattered. 2 more days passed without incident. Lyra began to hope the agent had lost interest. Then one afternoon, while Megan was in town gathering supplies, Lyra spotted a vehicle approaching the cabin. It moved slowly, deliberately, its occupant clearly searching for something. Lyra called to Ember, who had been playing outside with Pippa. The dragon returned immediately, sensing her urgency. Together, they watched from the window as the same government agent from the forest stepped out of the vehicle. The woman studied the cabin, then began to walk the perimeter, examining the ground. She was methodical, professional. Lyra recognized the behavior of a hunter from her days fighting the void. Reapers. Pippa began to bark, alerting the agent to something in the forest. The woman turned her hand, moving to a weapon concealed beneath her jacket. Lyra made a quick decision. She had been practicing with her limited remaining powers. The abilities of the Sylvan elves were largely based on energy manipulation, a form of science that humans might perceive as magic. She focused her energy, creating a small disturbance in the forest opposite the cabin. Lights appeared dancing among the trees. The illusion was not perfect, but it was enough. The agent noticed immediately. She hesitated, then moved toward the lights. Her weapon-drawn Lyra enhanced the illusion, making the lights retreat, leading the woman away from the cabin. When the agent was sufficiently distant, Lyra allowed the lights to fade. When Megan returned an hour later, Lyra explained what had happened. "They are getting closer," she said. "We may need to consider leaving." Megan looked distressed. "Where would you go?" Lyra had been considering this. The crashed ship could be repaired enough for atmospheric flight, perhaps enough to reach a neighboring planet in this solar system. But the thought of leaving Earth, of leaving Megan, created an unexpected ache. "I don't know," she admitted that evening as they sat by the fire. Lyra decided to share more of her true story. It was time Megan understood the full situation. "World was not just destroyed," she began. "It was consumed by beings we call Void Reapers. They move from galaxy to galaxy, absorbing civilizations, taking their knowledge, their technology, their essence." Ember curled in her lap, his scales a somber blue, reflecting the gravity of her words. "The Reapers leave nothing behind." She continued, "No survivors, no ruins, only emptiness. My people fought them for centuries. We were advanced, powerful. But the Reapers adapt, taking our strengths and turning them against us." Megan listened, her face pale in the firelight. "You think they might come here," she whispered. "If they tracked my ship, yes." Lyra confirmed. "And your world would have no defense against them. Your technology is too primitive, your weapons useless." "I should leave," Lyra said firmly, drawing herself up. "I must draw any potential threat away from Earth." Megan reached out, taking Lyra's hand. The contact sent that now familiar tingle through the alien's body. "Or we could fight together," Megan suggested. Lyra looked at her in surprise. "Humans may seem primitive," she continued, "but we are remarkably inventive when threatened. We adapt quickly. We survive." She gestured to her collection of scientific journals, the books that explained human discoveries and innovations. They talked late into the night, discussing possibilities. Megan explained aspects of human science that might be combined with Lyra's knowledge to create defenses. As they spoke, Lyra began to see the human in a new light. Despite their short lives, humans had advanced remarkably. Their science took different paths than Sylvan technology, but it was impressive nonetheless. The next morning, they began work, creating a plan to defend against both immediate human discovery and the more distant, but greater, threat of the Void Reapers. Lyra showed Megan how to modify some of her research equipment to detect energy signatures similar to those used by government scanning devices. They created an early warning system. They were testing this system when it suddenly activated. "A vehicle was approaching fast." "It's her," Megan said, looking at the readings. "The agent." There was no time to hide. Lyra considered using her powers to create another distraction. But before she could act, the vehicle was at the cabin. A sharp knock sounded at the door. "Stay calm," Megan whispered. "We have our cover story. Remember, you're my research assistant." She opened the door. The agent stood there, her expression serious. "Professional. Carrie Blackwood," she said, showing identification. "Environmental Research Division." Megan feigned confusion. "Can I help you? I'm investigating reports of unusual phenomena in this forest." Ms. Blackwood said, her eyes moving past. 3 months had passed since Agent Carrie Blackwood discovered the truth about Lyra. Against all expectations, she had not reported her findings to her superiors. Instead, she had returned to the cabin a week later with a proposition. "I want to help," she had said simply. Since that day, the 3 women had worked together in secret. Carrie, using her government access to monitor for signs of both official interest in the forest and any unusual astronomical phenomena, Megan applying her scientific knowledge to develop hybrid technologies that combined Earth science with Sylvan principles, and Lyra teaching them both about the Void Reapers, their weaknesses, their methods of attack. The ship hidden in the cave had been fully repaired, capable now of interplanetary travel, but Lyra had decided to remain on Earth. The choice surprised even her. She had grown attached to this world, to these humans. Their courage and determination impressed her, their capacity to adapt to new information, to accept the impossible and move forward was remarkable. Ember had continued to grow. Now the size of a large dog, his scales shifting through complex patterns that reflected his increasingly sophisticated thoughts. He could no longer perch on Lyra's shoulder but often walked beside her, his presence both protective and comforting. He and Pippa remained inseparable. The earth creature seeming to understand her companion was no ordinary animal. This particular morning, Lyra stood outside the cabin watching the sunrise. The air was cool autumn approaching according to Megan. The trees would soon change color, a phenomenon Lyra was eager to witness. She had seen many worlds, many natural wonders, but there was something special about Earth. Its wild beauty, its untamed diversity spoke to her. Sylvan heritage Megan joined her carrying 2 steaming cups of tea. She handed one to Lyra, who accepted it with a small smile. "Sleep well?" Megan asked. Lyra nodded. Though it wasn't entirely true, she had been restless, disturbed by dreams of her destroyed homeworld memories that never fully faded. "Carrie is coming today," Megan said. "She says she has news." They had established a regular meeting schedule to minimize suspicion. Carrie's visits appearing to be part of her environmental research. Other than Kelly, who occasionally called but had not visited again, no one else came to the remote cabin. Lyra sipped her tea, considering what news Carrie might bring. The agent had been monitoring deep space telemetry from various government agencies looking for signs that might indicate Void Reaper activity. So far, nothing unusual had been detected, but Lyra knew the absence of evidence was not evidence of absence. The Reapers were masters of stealth, often undetectable until they struck. Ember emerged from the cabin, stretching his wings, which now spanned several feet. He had been practicing short flights, strengthening muscles that would eventually carry him across great distances. Pippa followed, bounding around him playfully. "They make an odd pair," Megan observed, smiling at the 2 creatures. "Not so different from us?" Lyra replied. Megan looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "You and I," Lyra explained. "Different species, different worlds. And yet, here we are finding common ground." Megan seemed pleased by the comparison, her cheeks colored slightly. A human response Lyra had come to recognize as emotional reaction. Carrie arrived mid-morning, her government vehicle raising dust as it approached. The agent had become more relaxed around them, but today her expression was tense. She carried a folder tucked under one arm inside the cabin. She spread satellite images across the table. "These were taken yesterday," she explained, pointing to unusual energy readings at the edge of the solar system. Something passed through there fast. Lyra studied the images, her heart racing. The pattern was familiar too. Familiar. It could be a scout, she said quietly. Ember approached, sensing her distress. His scales shifted to deep crimson. His size increased slightly, a defensive reaction. Carrie nodded. "My division is calling it an unusual asteroid, but the energy signature doesn't match known phenomena," Lyra finished. "The Void Reapers send scouts ahead of their main force, small fast ships that assess potential targets." "Are you certain?" Megan asked, her voice steady, though Lyra could sense her fear. "No," Lyra admitted, "but we must prepare for the possibility." They spent the day reviewing their preparations. Over the months they had developed several defensive prototypes, a shield generator that could protect the cabin and surrounding area from most energy weapons, a communication system that could potentially interfere with Reaper coordination, and most importantly, a beacon that could alert any surviving Sylvan ships that might be in the galaxy. Lyra had hesitated to activate this beacon, fearing it might also attract unwanted attention. But now they might have no choice. They needed allies. That evening, as Carrie prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "I could bring in others," she suggested. "People I trust, scientists with expertise we could use." Lyra exchanged glances with Megan. The more humans who knew, the greater the risk of discovery. But also, the greater their chances of developing effective defenses. Carefully, Lyra said, "Only those absolutely necessary." After Carrie departed, Lyra went to the ship. She needed to check something, a suspicion that had been growing. The energy readings Carrie brought were troubling but also strangely familiar. The cave was cool and damp, the waterfall creating a constant white noise that masked the ship systems. Lyra placed her hand on the hull, the metal warming to her touch, responding to her unique energy signature. A panel slid open, allowing her entry. Inside, she activated the central computer. The symbols glowing in the dark familiar, comforting a connection to her lost world. She input the energy readings, watching as the system analyzed the pattern. Her suspicion was confirmed. The signature matched not just any Void Reaper scout but a specific class, the Shadow Seeker. The most advanced scout ship designed to remain completely undetectable. Except to the most sensitive equipment, Shadow Seeker was here. The main force would not be far behind. Lyra returned to the cabin to find Megan waiting. Worried. "What is it?" she asked. Seeing Lyra's expression, "We may have less time than I thought." Lyra explained. "The scout ship is advanced. It means they are committing significant resources to this sector." Megan absorbed this information, her scientific mind already calculating possibilities. "Should we evacuate?" she asked. "Move somewhere less isolated?" Lyra shook her head. "The Reapers would find us wherever we went, and running would only delay the inevitable. No, we must make our stand here where we have preparations." That night, Lyra activated the beacon. A calculated risk, but one they could no longer avoid. The signal would travel faster than light, using principles of quantum entanglement that human science was only beginning to understand. If any Sylvan ships remained within this galactic sector, they would receive the call as the beacon activated. Ember reacted immediately. His scales shifted to a deep blue with silver streaks, a pattern Lyra had never seen before. His size increased dramatically, his wingspan now nearly filling the small cabin. He turned to Lyra, his eyes glowing with ancient intelligence. "They are coming," he said, his first spoken words in a human language. Lyra stared at him in shock. Dragons of her world could communicate telepathically with their bonded elves, but rarely chose to speak aloud, and never in alien tongues. Ember, how she began, he cut her off. "They are coming," he repeated. "But others too. Listen." Lyra extended her senses beyond normal parameters, using abilities she rarely accessed. It required immense concentration, but slowly she detected it. A response to the beacon. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. "They live," she whispered. "Some of my people survived." Megan had witnessed the exchange with amazement. She approached Ember cautiously. "You can talk," she said. The dragon regarded her with ancient eyes. "I always could," he replied. "But rarely is. There need dragons speak when speaking matters." Lyra translated the implications for Megan. If Ember was speaking now, breaking thousands of years of tradition, it meant the situation was dire indeed. The next morning they were awakened by an urgent call from Carrie. "Turn on the news," she said, her voice tense. Megan activated her small television. The signal was weak this far from civilization, but clear enough. The news showed unusual astronomical activity. Multiple meteors had been spotted entering. The atmosphere scientists were calling it an unprecedented meteor shower. "Those aren't meteors," Lyra said grimly. "No," Carrie agreed. "My division has been mobilized. Something big is happening. I'm being called in for an emergency briefing. Be careful." Lyra warned. "If your government detects the true nature of these objects, they may take drastic action. Actions that would be ineffective against the Reapers but might complicate our own plans." Carrie promised to reveal nothing about them. She would gather what information she could and return as soon as possible. After the call ended, Lyra went outside, Ember following. They stood together looking at the sky. The sun shone brightly, no visible sign of the approaching threat. But they could feel it, a pressure in the air. A subtle wrongness. "They are testing defenses," Ember said. "This world's atmosphere, its electromagnetic field. They seek weaknesses." Lyra nodded. This was standard Reaper procedure, probing a planet's natural defenses before committing to full invasion. "How long?" she asked. "Hours, days, not weeks," Ember replied. Lyra had suspected as much. The timing was tight. They needed to complete their preparations and hope that the responding Sylvan ship, if indeed one was coming, would arrive in time. When she returned inside, Megan was gathering equipment. They had developed a plan for this scenario. Each had their role. Megan would monitor communications and coordinate with Carrie, Lyra would prepare the defensive technologies and dawn broke over the forest, revealing a changed world. The sky had an unnatural hue, purple and orange streaks cutting through clouds that moved too fast. The Sylvan ship hovered above the cabin, its crystalline structure refracting sunlight in prismatic patterns. 8. Sylvan warriors had joined them, each carrying weapons and technology salvaged from their fallen civilization. Kirana stood with Lyra at the edge of the shield perimeter. They watched as strange atmospheric disturbances rippled across the horizon. "The Reapers are testing your atmosphere," Kirana explained. "The chemical composition, the electromagnetic field. They seek optimal entry points." Lyra nodded, understanding the strategy. It was how the war had begun on her homeworld. 2. Subtle, probing before the devastating assault. Inside the cabin, Megan and Carrie coordinated with human authorities. Though they could not reveal the full truth, Carrie had convinced her superiors that she had critical information about the phenomena. They had granted her emergency authority to establish a research perimeter around the forest area, effectively keeping other humans away from the coming battleground. Ember had grown again overnight. Now the size of a horse, his scales hardened into armor, like plates. His wings spanned 20 feet when fully extended. He communicated telepathically with the Sylvan warriors, establishing a mental network that would allow instantaneous coordination during battle. "They are coming," he projected to all of them. The thought carried images, sensations, the cold emptiness of Void Reaper consciousness, the hunger that drove them across galaxies. "How many worlds have fallen since mine?" Lyra asked Kirana. "Too many," the ambassador replied. 7 major civilizations, countless lesser ones. The Reapers grow stronger with each absorption. Each world they consume adds to their knowledge, their capabilities. Can they be stopped?" Megan asked, joining them. Her scientific mind had been working continuously, analyzing Reaper patterns, seeking weaknesses. "They have never been defeated," Kirana admitted. "But neither have they faced an alliance like this. Your species has qualities ours lacked." "What qualities?" Carrie asked. She had been monitoring global communications. Human governments worldwide were in crisis, militaries mobilized, space agencies tracking the unknown objects, religious leaders offering explanations, panic spreading in major cities. "Adaptability," Kirana said. "Looking at the humans. Creativity. Your minds work differently than ours. Your species reproduces rapidly, evolves quickly. Where we sought perfection over millennia, you embrace change within generations." Lyra understood what Kirana meant. Sylvan reproduction happened rarely. New generations born centuries apart. Knowledge passed down relatively unchanged human biology. Their constant reproductive cycle allowed for faster adaptation, both physically and culturally. Midday brought the first direct attack. A Reaper scout ship broke through the upper atmosphere, heading directly for their location. Its design was organic, yet mechanical tendrils of dark energy trailing behind it. "The shield will hold," Lyra assured the others, though she wasn't entirely certain. The technology was hybrid, untested against actual Reaper weapons. The scout fired. A beam of purple energy struck the shield. The barrier rippled but held. Sylvan sensors analyzed the attack. "They are testing frequencies," Kirana observed. "They will adjust, find resonance." 3 more scouts joined the first, each firing at different points around the shield. The combined assault created strain. The generator hummed louder, its power fluctuating. Megan monitored the readings. "Energy output critical," she warned. "We need to reduce the shield diameter." Lyra made the adjustment. The shield contracted, pulling closer to the cabin. More focused, stronger, but protecting less area. The Sylvan ship remained within the perimeter, its own defenses supplementing theirs. As evening approached, a new development. One of the larger Reaper vessels descended, its massive form blocking out the setting sun. It hovered above the forest beyond the shield perimeter. Dark energy pulsed around it. "They send ground forces now," Kirana said. From the larger ship pods descended, each striking the earth with impact tremors that they felt even within the shield. From these pods emerged the foot soldiers of the Void Reaper army. Humanoid in basic shape, but wrong. Proportions, distorted limbs too long. Skin like oil on water. Features, twisted as though multiple species had been imperfectly combined. The communication disruptor Lyra said, "Now is the time." Carrie activated the device. Its influence subtle but effective. The Reaper ground forces paused their movements, becoming less coordinated. Their hive-mind connection temporarily scrambled. Now Ember projected. The Sylvan warriors took flight, their personal shield generators allowing them to pass through the main barrier. They engaged the Reaper forces' energy weapons blazing. Ember joined them. His size now truly dragon-like, his fire breath a torrent of blue flame that cut through Reaper. Armor Lyra watched the initial skirmish with calculating eyes. The Reapers adapted quickly, their movements becoming more independent, less reliant on central coordination. The disruptor would not work for long. She turned to Megan and Carrie. "This is your world. Your knowledge of the terrain. The environment might give us advantage." The humans nodded understanding. They had prepared. For this, Carrie pulled up topographical maps of the region. The forest's natural features could be used strategically. The river, the caves, the dense woodland. We need to draw them away from populated areas. Carrie said, "The nearest town is only 20
miles south." Megan pointed to a valley 5 miles north. Dense forest, steep cliffs restricted access. Perfect killing ground. Lyra communicated the plan to Kirana, who relayed it to the warriors and to Ember. The strategy required coordination precision.
The Sylvan forces would appear to retreat, drawing the Reaper ground troops into the valley as night fell fully. The battle intensified. The shield around the cabin flickered under sustained assault, but held. Each impact weakened it further. However, drawing power from the Sylvan ship had strengthened the defense temporarily. Lyra joined the battle. Her remaining powers were limited, but her knowledge of Reaper tactics was valuable. She moved through the forest with Sylvan grace, directing warriors, positioning traps. Energy weapons created from merged technologies proved effective, slowing the Reaper advance. The ground forces were being contained. The valley strategy working, but the ships above grew more numerous, more powerful. The sky itself seemed to darken with their presence. Megan and Carrie remained at the cabin, coordinating using the sensor network they had established to track movements. Carrie's government connections provided satellite data showing the broader picture. Reaper ships now surrounded Earth. Their main vessel, a massive organic structure, had taken position in orbit. "It's happening too fast," Carrie said. "These smaller attacks are just distraction. The main ship is positioning for atmospheric entry." The implication was clear. If the Reaper mothership descended fully, Earth would face the same fate as Lyra's homeworld. Complete consumption. Kirana returned to the cabin wounded, but unbowed. "We need more power," she said. "The communication array must be strengthened. Signal the fleet." "The fleet?" Lyra asked, hope rising. "More survived than we knew," Kirana explained. "They gather at the galactic edge waiting. But they must know where to strike." Together they modified the beacon, increasing its power using components from the Sylvan ship. The energy requirement was enormous. Their shield would be compromised, but they had no choice. As they worked, the battle outside intensified. Ember led a squadron of Sylvan warriors against a new wave of Reaper troops. His mental voice projected to Lyra. "They adapt quickly," he communicated. "They learn our patterns, change tactics," Lyra responded. "Be unpredictable. That is the human way." The enhanced beacon activated, sending its signal deep into space. A desperate call for reinforcements. The shield around the cabin flickered, nearly failed. Moments later, a Reaper scout broke through. The barrier collapsed. The alien creature entered the clearing, its form shifting between solid and vapor. Its soulless eyes focused on the beacon. Lyra moved to defend the device, her Sylvan blade drawn. It would be little use against the Reaper, but she would not surrender without fight. Megan grabbed a modified weapon they had developed, its energy signature specifically calibrated to disrupt Reaper cellular cohesion. The Reaper attacked fast, brutal. Lyra dodged its initial strike, her centuries of combat experience allowing her to anticipate its movements. But the creature was strong, powerful. It had absorbed the fighting skills of countless Species, Megan fired. The weapon discharged a pulse of energy that struck the Reaper. Its form wavered momentarily, destabilized, but quickly reformed. The creature turned its attention to Megan. No, Lyra shouted. She threw herself between the human and the Reaper. Her blade slicing through its arm, the creature shrieked a sound that penetrated mind and body. It regenerated quickly, the severed limb reforming. But differently, the blade had introduced sylvan energy into its system, creating momentary confusion in its adaptive process. Carrie fired another weapon, this one based on Lyra's ship technology. The combined assault forced the Reaper back, but more were approaching. The shield was down. They were exposed. Ember sensed their danger. He abandoned. The forest battle streaking back toward the cabin, his massive form casting shadows as he flew. A roar shook the air as he descended upon the Reaper forces. Fire engulfed the clearing. The heat intense, but somehow avoiding Lyra and the humans, the Reapers burned. Their adaptive capabilities, overwhelmed by dragonfire, an element they had not encountered before, had no defense against dragonfire. Was not merely physical, but partially